Finnegans Wake, Part 1, Episode 5. In the name of Anna the Almaziful, the ever-living, the bringer of plurabilities, haloed be her eve, her sing-time sung, her rill be run, unhemmed as it is uneven. Her untitled manifesta, memorializing the most highest, has gone by many names at disjointed times. Thus we hear of the Augusta Augustissimos for old sea bestius salvation, Rockabill Booby in the wave trough, here's to the relics of all decencies. Anastessa's rise to notice. Nickel down, Duddy, gun, and Arish, Sir Cannon, my golden one and my silver wedding, Amory Tristam and icy Sisul, saith the Sawyer till a Sirami, Ick Dick Dope Dope at 2 Mihi Mihi, by birthplate for a bite, which of your Hester days mean ye tomorrow? Hobegun the Hebrewer hit Waterman the brained, arcs in his ceiling, fleet chinks on the floor, Rebus to Hibernicus, the Crazier letters, groans of a Britaness, Peter Peepler picked a plot to pitch his poplin, an apology for a big, some such no noun as husband or hosebound is probably understood, for we have also the Pluther plethoric, my hoonspooned handsbads a journey to Portugal gone, and he never has the hour. Ought we to visit him? For Arc Sizu, Cleopatra's needlework fixturing Aldborough on the Sahara with the combing of the camels and the parlor maids of Egypt, cock in the pot for father, platiad vestre, a new cure for an old clap. Where portentos they'd grow gander, how I'd wish I was a geese. Gentle Nettie, thrust him not, when the myrtles of Venice played to Bacchus's line, to plunge me high he waves Chiltern on friends. Ormond's qui visits Amen Mart, e'en though I granny a bee, he would fain me cuddle. 20 of chambers, weighty 10 beds, and a one set room, I led the life. Through the boxer coxer rising in the house with the golden stairs, the following fork. He's my O Jerusalem, and I'm his Poe. The best in the West, by the stream of Zemzem under Zigzag Hill, the man had made his mother in the Marlbury train. Try our tall on a tub, the log of Annie to the Baysall, Nappertroped and Nappywank to his note little dancy girls. Press Orel, the king of all birds, in Timier Minislip of exterior monoloth. Drink to him, my jockey, and dult be mine thy winnowing sheet. I ask you to believe I was his mistress. He can explain. From Victrolia Nuance to Albert Nuancy, does a daisy to guinea your Hansel to, what Barbara's done to a barrel organ before the rank, tank, and bomb-tail, Huskfee ad mortal, what Jumbo made to Jealous and what Anisette to him. Orphelia's cool prince, here Hubty Hublin, my old Danch, I am older North rogues among wished I slips, and he calls me his duel of Aisha. Suppose a ventriloquist marries a corpse, laps for Finns this funny coon's week, how the buckling shut at Rush in January, look to the lady, from the rise of the Dutch public to the fall of his pot still, of the two ways of opening the mouth. I have not stopped water where it should flow, and I know the 29 names of Atrante. The Tortor of Tory Island treats Galatia like his milk cow, from Abbygate to Crow Alley through a lift in the Lude, smocks for the graces and meat for them clodsoppers, how to pull a good horoscope, even when old sire is dead into the world. In the gleam of Waterloo, faith, he's succeeded to my aspirations. These steps forward, 2 steps back. My skin appeals to 3 senses, and my curly lips demand column kisses. Gage Street on a cranny's savings. Them lads made a tryin' of battle watchers, and they totties a doit of deers. In my lord's bed by one whore went through it. Mum, it is all over. Cowboy ride by 12-acre terrace in the unique estates of a Mexican. He gave me a thou, so I serve him with thee. Of all the wide torsos and all the wild glen, O Donach, white Donach, he's you to me cry. I'm the stitch in his basque side, you'd be naught without Mom. To keep the huskies off the hustings and picture pets from lifting shops, Norsker Torsker find the pedal. He pursed me here with his ardor of a Tonneburks. A boob was weeping, this motor was weeping. O Lachlan, up from the pit of my stomach I swish you the white of the morning. Anglo-Andean medleys from Tammany Moor. The great Polynesian entertainer exhibits Ballantine brochures with the link of natures. The mimic of Meg Neg and the Mackeys entered as the lastest pigtail and my porridical at Stitchener's Hall. Sigfield's Follies and or A Gentle Ohm's Faux Pas. See the first book of Jealousy's Pessim. The Suspended Sentence, a pretty brick story for child-sized heroes. As low our sleep. I knew I'd got it in me, so that settles that. Thunderbolt Captain Smith and La Belle Sauvage Pocahontas. Way for a wet week, Wellikins Duchka Marianne, the last of the Fingalians. It was me egged him on to the Stork Exchange and led my dutiful face to his customs. Cheels on their China Miction. Picked me up Peters. Lumpty Tumpty had a big fall. Pimp, 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 pimp. Measly ventures of 2 lice and the fall of fruit. The Folks family interior. If my spread eagles wasn't so tight, I'd loosen my corsets on that bunch of Maggie straps. Ah, Lalosha Popafets and Hauk catch me eye. Seen apples and then died. I beg you to believes from love and mother. Finds fault was no felon. Exat Delvin renter life. The flash that flies from Vuggy's eyes has set me hair on fire. His is the house that Malt made, divine views from back to the front. Abe to Sayre stood ik neuter till Bram talked him common sex. A nibble at eve will that browl relieve. All for guineas, sounds and compliments libidus. 7 wives awake a week, Ariane and Berber Blut. Amy licks porter while Huffy chops heads. A brace of umbrellas or a triple of canes. Butter, butter, bust. From the manor lord hove to the Mrs. O'Malley's, and from the dames to their sames. Many festoons for the colleagues on the green, an outstanding back and an excellent half center if called on. As tree is quick and stone is white, so is my washing done by night. First and last only true account all about the honorary Mersu Earwicker, LSD, and the snake, Nuggets, by a woman of the world who only can tell naked truths about a dear man and all his conspirators, how they all tried to fall him, putting it all around, local is it about private's earwicker and a pair of sloppy sluts, plainly showing all the unmentionability falsely accusing about the raincoats. The proteiform graph itself is a polyhedron of scripture. There was a time when naive alphabeters would have written it down the tracing of a purely deliquescent recidivist, possibly ambidextrous, snub-nosed probably, and presenting a strangely profound rainbow in his or her occiput. To the heartily curiosing entomophilist, then it has shown a very sex mosaic of nymphosis in which the eternal chimera hunter Oreolops, now fond of sugars, then leaf of salts, the sensory crowd in his belly, coupled with an eye for the goods, truth, bewilderblissed by their night effluvia, with guns like drums and fondlers like forceps, persequestulates his Vanessas from floor to floor. Somehow this sounds like the purest kidleun wherein our metamarcaration of Lord Laura's rich, also hero hum to us in a kitchenette duckness, by bastard and worn rolls all reared. We must grope on till 0 hour, like poo old jowers as we are, we would salve aught of moments for our eyesore today. Amusing though not but. Closer inspection of the bordereau would reveal a multiplicity of personalities inflicted on the documents or document, and some prevision of virtual crime or crimes might be made by anyone unwary enough before any suitable occasion for it or them had so far managed to happen along. In fact, under the closed eyes of the inspectors, the traits featuring the chiaroscuro coalesce, their contrarieties eliminated, in one stable somebody, similarly as by the providential warring of heartshaker with housebreaker, and of dram drinker against freethinker, our social something bowls along bumpily, experiencing a jolting series of prearranged disappointments, down the long lane of, it's as simper as Oxhouse Humper, generations, and still more generations. Say, Baroon Lousador, who in hell wrote the dumb thing anyhow? Erect, beseated mountebank against a party wall, below freezigrade by the use of Quiller style, with turbid or pellucid mind, accompanied or the reverse by mastication, interrupted by visit of seer to scribe, or of scribe to sight, atwixt two showers or a toss of a trike, rained upon or blown around by a right-down regular racer from the soil, or by a two-paned whittle-wit laden with the lute of learning? Now, patience. And remember, patience is a great thing. And above all things else, we must avoid anything like being or becoming out of patience. A good plan used by worried business folk who may not have had many momentums to master Kung's doctrine of the meaning or the propriety coach truces of Capri Mustimus is just to think of all the sinking fund of patience possessed in their conjoint names by both brothers Bruth, with whom are incorporated their Scotch Spider and Elberfeld's calculating horses. If after years upon years of delving in ditches dark, one tub thumper more than others, Kinnihoon or Cahanan, Gardiner, or mere Miesenmanganger, has got up for the darn all same purpose of reassuring us with all the barbar of the Carriagee house, that our great ascendant was, properly speaking, 3 syllables less than his own surname. Yes, less. That the ear of Finn Earwicker aforetime was the trademark of a broadcaster with wicker local jargon for an ace's patent. Here, calls, everywhere. Then as to this radioscillating epi-epistle, to which cotton silk or samite, coal, gall, or brick dust we must ceaselessly return, whereabouts exactly at present in Siam, Hell, or Tophet, under that glory sol which plays touraloop with us in his Aludens cove of our cajacity, is that bright so and such to slip us the dinkum oil? Naysayers, we know. To conclude purely negatively from the positive absence of political odia and monetary request that its page cannot ever have been a pen product of a man or woman of that period or those parts, is only one more unlooked-for conclusion leaped at, being tantamount to interfering from the non-presence of inverted commas, sometimes called quotation marks, on any page that its author was always constitutionally incapable of misappropriating the spoken words of others. Luckily, there is another cant to the questee. Has any fellow of the dime a dozen type, it might with some profit some dull evening quietly be hinted, has any usual sort of ornery josser, flat-chested, 40-ish, faintly flatulent, and given to ratiocination by syncopation in the elucidation of complications, of his greatest Funyang dynasty descendants, only another the son of, in fact, ever looked sufficiently longly at a quite everyday-looking stamped, addressed envelope? Admittedly, it is an outer husk. Its face, in all its featureful perfection of imperfection, is its fortune. It exhibits only the civil or military clothing of whatever passion-pallid nudity or plague-purpled nakedness may happen to tuck itself under its flap. Yet to concentrate solely on the literal sense or even the psychological content of any document, to the sore neglect of the enveloping facts themselves circumstantiating, it is just as hurtful to sound sense. And let it be added, to the truest taste. As were some fellow in the act of perhaps getting an intro from another fellow, turning out to be a friend in need of his, say, to a lady of the latter's acquaintance, engaged in performing the elaborative ancestral ceremony of upstairs, straight away to run off and vision her plump and plain and her natural altogether, preferring to close his Blinkhard's eyes to the ethical fact that she was, after all, wearing, for the space of the time being, some definite articles of evolutionary clothing, inharmonious creations. A captious critic might describe them as, or not strictly necessary, or a trifle irritating here and there. But for all that, suddenly full of local color and personal perfume, and suggestive too of so very much more, and capable of being stretched, filled out, if need or wish were, of having their surprisingly like coincidental parts separated, don't they now, for better survey by the deft hand of an expert, don't you know, who in his heart doubts either that the facts of feminine clothing are there all the time, or that the feminine fiction, stranger than the facts, is there also at the same time, only a little to the rear, or that one may be separated from the other, or that both then may be contemplated simultaneously, or that each may be taken up and considered in turn apart from the other. Here let a few artifacts fend in their own favor. The river felt she wanted salt. That was just where Brian came in. The country asked for bear's paw for Din-Din, and bounden it got it surely. We who live under heaven, we of the clovery kingdom, we Middleson's people have often watched the sky overreaching the land. We certainly have. Our isle is Sains, the place that stern chuckler mayhap not, once said to Repetition in that Lutrin conservatory way of his, that is it chapelle as it Lucan was the one place, ult out nult, in this mad vale of terrors, whose verdures yellowed therever Phaeton parks his car, while its tamalized ray is the dream of Draenophilus, where the possible was the improbable, and the improbable the inevitable. If the proverbial bishop of our holy and undivided, with this me ken or no me ken zot, is the quiz-tune Havermashed, had his 2 nails on the head, we are in for a sequentiality of improbable possibles, though possibly nobody after, having grubbed up a lock of cold corn above his subject, probably in Aristoteli's, or the Vive, will go out of his way to applaud him on the unvoiced back of his remark, for utterly impossible as are all those events, they are probably as like those which may have taken place as any others, which never took person at all, are ever likely to be. How about that original hen? Midwinter, fur or cur, was in the offing, and Primver a promise of April, when, as Kitchabridges sang life's old sad song, an ice-clad shiverer, merest of bantlings, observed a cold fowl behaviorizingly strangely on that fatal midden, or chip factory, or comical Baden Kopstute, dump for short. Afterwards changed into the orangery, when in the course of deeper demolition, unexpectedly, one bushman's holiday, its limen threw up a few spontaneous fragments of orange peel, the last remains of an outdoor meal by some unknown sun-seeker or place-hider, illico way back in his mist-ridden past. What child of a strand-looper but keepy little Kevin, in the despondful surrounding of such sneezing cold, would ever have trooped up on a straight, that what was called street, a motive for future sanctity, by euchering the finding of the Arda chalice by another Haley innocent and beach walker, whilst trying with pious clamor to wheedle tipperaw raw re-raw pewters out of New Zealand, in spite of the patch purple of the massacre. A duel to die today, Goddam and bigud, sticks and stanks of most of the Jacobiters. The bird in the case was Belinda of the Dorans, a more than quinquagenarian. Tertius prize was Cerny medal, cheap Lizzie's Hain exposition. And what she was scratching at the hour of clocking 12 looked for all this zigzag world like a good-sized sheet of letter paper originating by transshipped from Boston, Mass, of the last of the first, to dear whom it proceeded to mention, Maggie, well, and all at home's health well, only the hate turned the mild on the Van Hootens, and the general's elections with a lovely face of some born gentleman with a beautiful present of wedding cakes for dear, thank you, Christy, and with grand fun for all of poor Father Michael, don't forget unto life's, and muggy well, how are ye, Maggie, and hope soon to hear, well, and must now close it with fondest to the twins, with 4 cross kisses for Holy Paul, Holy Corner, Holy Polly, Holy Island. P.S. From Locust may eat all, but this sign shall they never. Affectionate, large-looking tatch of chich. The stain, and that a tea stain, the over-cautelousness of the master bilker here, as usual, signing the page away, marked it off on the spout of the moment as a genuine relic of ancient Irish pleasant pottery of that Lydia-like languishing class known as a hurry-me-o'er the hazy. Why then how? Well, almost any photoist worth his chemicots will tip anyone asking him the teaser that if a negative of a horse happens to melt enough while drying, well, what you get is, well, a positively grotesquely distorted macromass of all sorts of horse-happy values and masses of melt-wild horse. Tip. Well, this freely is what must have occurred to our missive. There's a sod of a turb for you. Please wisp off the grass. Unfilthed from the boucher by the sagacity of a look-me-little-like-me-long hen. Heated residence in the heart of the orange-flavored mud mound had partly obliterated the negative to start with, causing some features palpably nearer your pecker to be swollen up most grossly, while the farther back we managed to wiggle, the more we need the loan of a lens to see as much as the hen saw. Tip. You was feeling like you was lost in the bush, boy? You says, it is a puling sample jungle of woods. You most shouts out, be thicker'n me for a stump of a beach if I have the poultriest notions what the fairest he all means. Gee up, girlie. The quad gospelers may own the Targum, but any of the Zingari Shulerim may pick a peck of kindlings yet from the sack of old hen sign. Lead, kindly fowl. They always did ask the ages. What bird has done yesterday, man may do next year, be it fly, be it molt, be it hatch, be it agreement in the nest. For her socio-scientific senses sound as a bell, sir, her Volocrin automutativeness right on normalcy. She knows, she just feels she was kind of born to lay and love eggs. Trust her to propagate the species and whoosh her fluffball safe through din and danger. Lastly, but mostly, in her genetic field, it is all game and no gammon. She is ladylike in everything she does and plays the gentleman's part every time. Let us auspice it. Yes, before all this has time to end, the golden age must return with its vengeance. Man will become dirigible. Ague will be rejuvenated. Woman, with her ridiculous white burden, will reach by one step sublime incubation. The main wanting human lioness, with her dishorned discipular man-ram, will lie down together publicly, flank upon fleece. No, assuredly, they are not justified, those gloom pourers who grouse that letters have never been quite their old selves again since that weird weekday in bleak Janvier. Yet how palmy date in a waste oasis, when to the shock of both, Biddy Doran looked at literature. And she may be a mere Marcella, this midget majesty, mistress of arts, but it is not a hear or say of some enamorous letter signed Toga Gorillas. Teasy dear, we have a cop of her first right against our nosybos. We note the paper with her jotty young watermark, Notre Dame du Bon Marché, and she has a heart of Erin. What Huma lilts as she falls with her fallaminners and her nadia nods, as a straw will shaw she does the wind blag, recting to show the rudeness of a rober curling and shoeing the fancities of a frisette. But how many of her readers realize that she is not out to dizzle-dazzle with a great uncoutrement of post-mantuum glazaries from the Lapins and the Griggs? Nothing's on her wild life. Rare good and grandy for old Almianium etymologists like Daria Morius and Zovo Trimazarov Merovian Zim Zim. She feel plain plate, one flat fact thing. And if lastwise to firstwise, a man alone's sine anyone anyon's utheras has no rates to done a kick at with anyon anakers about tutus milking fories and the rerears on the outer end a seeking the tutus to be forwarder. Thing crookly vexed and very pasture six dicks like and say him around hers t him magger by kin can with down mind looking gated. Mesdames, Mademoiselle, Messieurs, s'il vous plaît. All Schwanz, schreits, ich tell the cock's truth about him. Kapok, kapok. No Minzy's matter. He had to see life foully, the plaque and the smut, she writes. There were 3 men in him, she writes. Dancings, she writes, was his only 2 feebles, with apple harlots and a little molvagels, especially, she writes, when they peaches. Honeys wear camellia pants, yours very truthful, add dapple in. Yet is it but an old story, the tale of a tree stone with one he's old, of a mons held by tent pegs, and his pal what the loosed on the run. What cadman could, but badman wouldn't. Any Genoa man against any Venus, and why Kate takes charge of the waxworks. Let us now, whether health, dangers, public orders, and other circumstances permitting, of perfectly convenient, if you police, after you, police, pardoning mean, ich beam so fresh, bay. Drop this jiggery pokery and talk straight turkey, meat to mate. For while the ear, be we Michaels or Nicholas, may sometimes be inclined to believe, others, the eye, whether browned or Nolan's, find it devilish hard now and again even to believe itself. Habes ores et num videbis? Habes oculos ac mene palpabuat? Tip, drawing near to take our slant at it. Since after all it has met with misfortune while all underground, let us see all there may remain to be seen. I am a worker, a tombstone mason, anxious to please everybody's and jolly glad when Christmas comes his once a year. You are a poor Joyce, unctuous to please no boppies, and tunnably solely when this time took our home gin. We cannot say eye to eye, we cannot smile nose from nose. Still, one can help noticing that rather more than half of the lines run north-south in the Nemzes and Bucharest directions, while the others go west-east in search from Malazes with Bulgarad. For tiny tot though it looks when stup nistling alongside other incunabula, it has its cardinal points for all that. These ruled barriers, along which the traced words run, march, halt, walk, stumble at doubtful points, stumble up again in comparative safety, seem to have been drawn first of all in a pretty checker with lampblack and blackthorn. Such crossing is anti-Christian, of course, but the use of the home-born shillelagh as an aid to calligraphy shows a distinct advance from savagery to barbarism. It is seriously believed by some that the intention may have been geodetic, or in the view of the cannier, domestic economical. But by writing thitherways, end-to-end, turning, and end-to-end hitherways, writing, and with lines of litters slittering up and louds of ladders sluttering down, the old semi-tommy place in Jupit back again from Tom, let rise till hum lit. Sleep, where in the waste is the wisdom? Another point, in addition to the original sand, pounce powder, drunkard paper, or soft rag used. Any vet or inhanger in our sat social can see the scene for himself. A wee fofty-odd room, the cheery spluttered on the one carrig, a darka de sheen of ooze from Dalbania, and he got quantity of raki, a porticle and some book setting out on the sofa. You remember the sort of softball sucker Motru used to tell us when we were all beery bees or nippies in mazes. It has acquired accretions of tertious matter whilst loitering in the past. The tea time stained terminal, say not the tag, mummer, or our show's a failure, is a cozy little brown study all to oneself. And whether it be thumbprint, maid mark, or just a portrait of the artless, its importance in establishing the identities in the writer complexus. For if the hand was one, the minds of active and agitated were more than so, will best be appreciated by never forgetting that both before and after the Battle of the Boyne, it was a habit not to sign letters always. Tip, and it is surely a lesser ignorance to write a word with every consonant, too few then to add all too many. The end? Say it with missals then, and thus arabesque the page. You have your cup of scalding souchong, your tapers wax and drop, your cat's paw, the clove or coffin nail you chewed or champed as you worded it, your lark in clear air. So why, pray, sign anything, as long as every word, letter, pen stroke, paper space is a perfect signature of its own? A true friend is known much more easily and better into the bargain by his personal touch, habits of full or undress, movements, response to appeals for charity, than by his footwear, say. And speaking anent Tiberius and other incestuous salacities among gerontophils, a word of warning about the tenderloined passion hinted at. Some soft-nosed peruser might mayhem take it up erogenously as the usual case of spoons, prostituta in herba, plus Dinky Pink's deliberatively somersaulting off her bisex cycle at the main entrance of Curate's perpetual soutane suit, with her one to see and a woe, who picks her up as gingerly as any balm bearer would, to feel whereupon the Virgin was most hurt, and nicely asking, "Where have you been so grace-a-mauling, and where were you chased, me child? Be who, Father Potential?" And so wider, but we grisly old sickos who have done our unsmiling bit on Alice's when they were young and easily frightened in the penumbra of the procuring room, and what oracular compression we have had applied to them, could, did we care to sell our fee-bought silence in camera, tell our very moist-nostrilled one that father in such variegated context is not always that undemonstrative relative, often held up to our contumacy, who settles our hash bill for us, and what an innocent all abroad's adverb such as Michaely looks like can be suggestive of under the pudendoscope. And finally, what a Nordestein nympholept, endocrine pineal typus of inverted parentage, with a prepossessing drama present in her past, and a priapic urge for congress with agnates before cognates, fundamentally is feeling for under her lubricitous meiosis, when she refers with liking to some feeler she fancies face. And, we could, yet what need to say? 'Tis as human a little story as paper could well carry, in effect, as Sing Sing so salamen suing to swit victuals, well as unbluffingly blurt a brusque blunt as an Ezra, the cat's meter, the meter's cat's wife, the meter's cat's wife half better, the meter's cat's wife half better's meter, and so back to our horses. For we also know, what we have perused from the pages of I Was a General, that shouting up of Bucklevism by Schottenboom, that Father Michael about this red time of the White Terror equals the old regime, and Margaret is a social revolution, while cakes mean the party fund, and dear thank you signifies national gratitude. In fine, We have heard as it happened of Spartacus intercellular. We are not Korknered yet, dead hand. We can recall with volunteers the froggy Jew, and sweeter, for 'twere now we stinks in Dumble's fair city, ere one more year is o'er. We turned our coast to the good gay Thames, when from down swords the sea merged the oldest guns, and answer made the bold O'Dwyer. But est modest in verbos. Let a prostitute be whoso stands before a door and winks, or parks herself in the fornix near a make-hussin wall, sin, 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 sin. And the curate, one who brings strong waters, gin, 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 gin. But also, and dinna forget, that there is many a sleeps between some at home's first and more in Osland's last, and that the beautiful presence of waiting Kates will, until life's, be more than enough to make any milkmike in the language of sweethearts punch hell's hate into his twin Nicky and that Maggie's tea, or, your majesty, if heard as a boost from a born gentleman is. For if the lingo gasped between kick sheets, however basically English, were to be preached from the mouths of wicker church wardens and metaphysicians in the row and avocatos, alvoyous, demi-voyelles, languiths, lesbials, dentelles, gutter howls, and furts, where would their practice be? Or where the human race itself, were the Pythagorean sesquipedalia of the Panepistemion, however apically Volapucky, Granted and Cromwell, Ichabod, Babcock, Opanoff, Ugamig, Hapaxel, Gomenon, over country stiles, behind slated dwelling houses, down blind lanes, or when all fruit fails, under some sacking left on a coarse cart. So hath been, love, 'tis, and will be, till wears and tears and ages. Thief is the night, steal we the air, shawl thiner lifest mine. Here, oh here, insult the fair. Traitor, bad hearer, brave. The lightning look, the birding cry, off from the grave, ever flowing on the times. Fura Jusaria, Lord and water, now godson shine on Mende's daughter. A good clap, a foremarriage, a bad wake, tell hell's well. Such is Manawife's lot of lows and win again. Like he's grown o' whiskers on whose chin again. She plucked them out, but they grown in again. So what are you going to do about it? Oh dear. If Junus be saved, aho, and if Eulone be proved, the old stoliolum, from Quinet to Mitch Chelet, and a Jean Baptiste to a Brulo. It is told in sounds and utter that, in signs so adds to, in universal, in polyglottal, in each auxiliary neutral idiom, sorta mutix, flora lingua, shelta focal, flay flutter, a cons cubane, a prose toot, strasserab, erapers, and any tongue at all. Since Nazi Nanette tripped palmy ways with hi-ho Harry, there's a spurt fire turf a kind of kindling, when oft as the soof blows her peaties up, and a clay pot wet for thee, my cities, and talk a tell Tibbs has Eve. And what though, revelous life proving I the death of Tonaldses, when wind power wine had bucked the kick on poor one man, biliousness has been biliousness during millions of millenniums, and our mixed racings have been giving 2 hoots or 3 cheers for the grape wine and brew, and Peters in New Amsterdam, and Paoli's where the pools go, and rum smelt his end for him, and he dined off South American. It would give one the friar, even were one a normal kettle liquor. These old world epistola of their weatherings and their marryings and their buryings and their natural selections has tumbled down to us first and made it all ours like an old cup on tea. As I was hatting me souser, ha, and as you was called in your Dutchy hovel, ho, she told a tale or her tune, hoo. Now capnomancy and infusionism may both fit as tight as two trivets, but will we in our wee free state, holding to that pre-statute in our charter, may have our irremovable doubts as to the whole sense of the lot, the interpretation of any phrase in the whole, the meaning of every word of a phrase so far deciphered out of it. However unfettered our Irish daily independence, we must want no idle dubiosity as to its genuine authorship and holus bolus authoritativeness. And let us bring these cease to beakerings on that clink, almond bottler. On the face of it, to volt back to our desultory horses, and for your roughshod mine, Baffalost bull, the affair is a thing once for all done, and there ye are, somewhere, and finished in a certain time, be it a day or a year, or even supposing it should eventually turn out to be a serial number of goodness gracious alone knows how many days or years. Anyhow, somehow and somewhere, before the book flood or after her ebb, somebody mentioned by name in his telephone directory, Cocolanius or Galatorus, wrote it all down, and there you are, full stop. Oh, undoubtedly, yes, and very pottably so. But one who deeper thinks will always bear in the back buckus of his mind that this downright there you are, and there it is only all in his eye. Why? Because, Sophron Babel, if it goes to that, and Dorma window gossip will cry it from the housetops no surelier than the writing on the wall will hew it to the maud of men that mote in the main street, every person, place, and thing in the cosmos of Allah any way connected with the gobble-dump Turkery was moving and changing every part of the time. The traveling inkhorn, possibly pot, the hare and turtle pen and paper, the continually more and less intermisunderstanding minds of the anti-collaborators, the as time went on as it will, variously inflected, differently pronounced, otherwise spelled, changeably meaning vocable script signs. No, so help me Peatalt, it is not a miseffectual wyasynchronous riot of blots and blurs and bars and balls and hoops and wriggles and juxtaposed jottings, linked by spurts of speed. It only looks as like it is, damn it. And sure we ought really to rest thankful that at this delightful hour of dung-flies dawning, we have even a written on with dried ink scrap of paper at all to show for ourselves. Tear it or leave it. And we are left it to ourselves as the soul fisher when he led the cat out of the boat. After all that, we lost and plundered of it, even to the hidmost coinings of the earth, and not all it is gone through, and by all means, after a good ground kiss to Taracussa, and for war's luck, our left-offs flung over our home homoplate. Cling to it as with drowning hands, hoping against hope all the while that, by the light of philosophy, and may she never full sage us, things will begin to clear up a bit one way or another within the next quarrel of an hour, and be hanged to them as 10 to 1 as they will, too, please the pigs, as they ought to categorically, as strictly between ourselves. There is a limit to all things, so this will never do. For with that farmfrau's foul flair for that flayfell foxfetter, the calamites calamitas calling for calamitous calamitants, who that, scrutinizing marvels at those indignant whip-loop lashes, those so prudently bolted or blocked rounds, the touching reminiscence of an incompleted trail or dropped final, around thousand whirligig glorioles, prefaced by, alas, now illegible, airy plume flights, all tiberiously ambi-embellishing the initials majuscule of earwicker, the meant-to-be baffling chrismen trilithon sign, finally called after some his hesitancy, heck, which moved contra whichwise represents his title insignia as the smaller delta, fondly called, following a certain change of state of grace of nature, alp or delta when single, stands for or tautologically stands beside the consort. Though for that matter, since we have heard from Cathay circles how the hen is not merely a tick or two after the first, fifth, fourth of the second, eighth, 12th, Sang Chang Hong Kong San Chenul, but virally the other and 30th of the ninth from the 20th, our own vulgar 432 and 1132 irrespectively, why not take the former for a village inn, the latter for an upside-down bridge, a multiplication marking for crossroads ahead, which you like Pothook for the family gibbet, their old four-wheeler for the buckler's field, a T anyway for a tryst someday, and his one side missing for an all-blind alley leading to an Irish plot in the Champ de Mars, not? The steady monologue of the interiors, the pardonable confusion for which some blame the cudgel and more blame the soot, but on thanks to which the peas with their caps awry are quite as often as not taken for cues with their tails in their or are quite as often as not taken for pews with their tails in their mouths. Thence your Christopher Columbus, hence our cat Presbyterians, the curt witty-watty dashes never quite just right at the trim trite truth letter, the sudden spluttered petulance of some capitalized middle, a word as cunningly hidden in its maze of confused drapery as a field mouse in a nest of colored ribbons, that absurdly bull-footed bee, declaring with an even plainer dump show than does the mute commoner with us how hard a thing it is to be born a gentleman. And look at this pre-pronominal fun for all, engraved and retouched and edge-wiped and pudding-padded, very like a whale's egg, farced with pemmican, as were it sentenced to be muzzled over a full trillion times forever in a night, till his noddles sink or swim by that ideal reader suffering from an ideal insomnia. All those red-rattled oboli cave and peppercast over the text, calling unnecessary attention to errors, omissions, repetitions, and misalignments. That, probably local or personal, variant maggers for the more generally accepted majesty, which is but a trifle, and yet may quickly amuse. Those supercilious-looking crisscrossed Greek E's, awkward like perched there and here, out of date, like sick owls hawked back to Athens. And the Gigi's, too, Jesuistically formed at first, but afterwards genuflected agrily towards the Occident. The Ostrogothic cacography affected for certain phrases of Etruscan stable talk, and in short, the learning betrayed at almost every line's end, the head strength, at least 11 men of 32 palfrey craft, revealed by a constant labor to make a gimel pass through the eye of an iota. This, for instance, utterly unexpected synergyric return to one peculiar sore point in the past, those thrown open W's of an early muddy Turanian origin, whether man chooses to damn them agglutinatively loo to blue face ache, or ilvu paudy hole, or cant's courts topple fools, seated with such flop right down determination, and reminding us ineluctably of nature at her naturalist. Well, that fretful fidget F, the hornful de gamma of your born a barber, rarely heard now, save when falling from the unfashionable ellipsis of some heterosexual, used always in two bold-faced print types, one of them as wrong-headed as his Claudian brother, is it worthwhile interrupting to say, throughout the papyrus as the revise mark. Stalks all over the page, broods, F, sentient seeking an idea amid the verbiage, gaunt, stands dejectedly in the diapered window margin with its basque of bay leaves all aflutter about its forked frogs, paces with a frown, jerking to and fro, flinging phrases here or there, or returns inhibited with some half-halted suggestion, F, dragging its shoestring, the curious warning sign before our proto-parents, ipsissima verba, a very pure nondescript, by the way, sometimes a palm-tailed otter, more often the arbutus flute flower leaf of the cane apple. which paleographers call a leak in the thatch, or the Aaron man in pervis through the hole of his hat, indicating that the words which follow may be taken in any order desired. Hole of Aaron man, the hat through the whispering his hoe. Here keen again and begin again to make sound sense and sense sound kin again. Those haughty pitched disdotted H's, easily of the rarest and as droll as most of the jaywalking I's we do plow into have, unconnected, principial, medial, or final. Always Jims in the jam, sahib, as pipless as threadworms. The innocent exhibitionism of those frank yet capricious underlinings, that strange, exotic serpentine, since so probably banished from our scripture, about as frequing a wetter hand now as to see a right-headed lady white don a cock horse, which in its invisible insolence ever longer more and of more morosity seems to uncoil spirally and swell lacertin lazily before our eyes under pressure of the writer's hand. The ungainly musicianlessness so painted and sculpting self-sounder, as black artful as a podatus, and dumbfounder, oh ho, oprorios as 10 cannons in skelterfuge. The studious omission of year number and era name from the date, the one and only time when our copyist seems at least to have grasped the beauty of restraint. The lubricitous conjugation of the last with the first, the gypsy mating of a grand stylish grave digging with second best buns, an interpolation. These munchables occur only in the Butherbrauth family of manuscripts. BB Codex 4, Pap 2, Brecht 11, Lund 3, Din 17, Sup 30, Full Up, MDCXC. The scholiast has hungrily misheard a dead man's taller as a muffin bell. The four shortened ampersands under which we can glimpse at and feel for ourselves across all those rush years, the warm, soft, short pants of the quick scribbler, the vocative lapse from which it begins, and the accusative hole in which it ends itself, the aphasia of that heroic agony of recalling a once loved number leading slip by slipper to a general amnesia of misnomering one's own. Next, those R's, those R's, all bellical, the high priest's hieroglyph of kettle tom and odds bones, rasted red-handedly from our hallowed rubric prayer for truce with booty. O Remus pro Romulo, and rudely from the fane's pinnacle tossed down by Porter to within a name's ace of their quatrain of ruby jets among those who arse without the temple, nor since rose distillery burned have quaffed night's fire-filled cup, but jig jog jug as day the dice box throws, wang, loyal six I lead, out where your heart's blood bless ye. And there she's for you, Sir Wanger, the fine ooman, rouge to her lobster lux the Rossi. Wang, God and a man has it with his ruddy old villain Rufus. Wait, Wang, God and you're another. He hasn't, for there's my spoil 5 of Spud's trumps. Wang, whack on his pigskins kisser for him. K.M. O'Mara, where are ya? Then, coming over to the left aisle corner down, the cruciform postscript, from which 3 basia or shorter and smaller oscula have been over carefully scraped away, plainly inspiring the tenebrous tunk page of the Book of Kells. And then it need not be lost sight of that there are exactly 3 squads of candidates for the Crucian rows awaiting their turn in the marginal panels of Column Killer, chugged in their 3 ballot boxes, then set apart for such hanging committees where 2 was enough for anyone, starting with old Matthew himself, as he with great distinction said, then just as since then people speaking have fallen into the custom, when speaking to a person, of saying, 2 is company, when the 3rd person is the person darkly spoken of. And then that last labiolingual basium might be read as a suavium, if whoever the embracer then was wrote with a tongue in his, or perhaps her, cheek, as the case may have been then. In the fatal droop-a-windle slope of the blamed scrawl, a sure sign of imperfectible moral blindness, the too muchness, the far too manyness of all those four-legged M's. And why spell, dear God, with a big thick D? Why, oh why, oh why? The cut and dry acts and wise form of the semi-final. And 18thly or 24thly, but at least thank Morris lastly, when all is said and done, the Penelopian patience of its last paraph, a colophon of no fewer than 732 strokes, tailed by a leaping lasso, who thus at all this marveling, but will press on hotly to see the vaulting feminine libido of those interbranching oum sex up in sweeps, sternly controlled and easily repersuaded by the uniform matter-of-factness of a meandering male fist? Duff Mugley, who now may be quoted by very kind arrangement, his dextrose-sophonious photosynthesis under suprasonic light control may be logged for by our none too distant futures as soon as stone values can be turned out from chromophilimos limited at 1,000,000 centime the microamp. First called this kind of Patagoeasy partnership the Ulkian or Tetrachiric or Quadrimiane or Ducks and Drakes or Debts and Dishes perplex, v. some forestallings over that studium of sexophonologistic schizophrenicis, volume 24, pages 2 to 555. After the well-informed observation, made miles apart from the master by tongue-toyd, see, for example, later frustrations amongst the neo-Muglian teachings about the semi-consciousness, passim, that in the case of the little-known periplic bestseller popularly associated with the names of the wretched mariner, Triumphoran Daffwodoff, our plum-sucked pattern shapekeeper, a Punic Admiralty report from Macpherson's Oisin round by the tides of Jason's cruise had been cleverly capsized and saucily republished as a Dodechanesian Baedeker of the very every tale a treat in itself variety, which could hope satisfactorily to tickle me gander as game as your goose. The unmistaken identity of the persons in the Tiberius duplex came to light in the most devious of ways. The original document was in what is known as Hanno o Nan Hanno's unbrookable script. That is to say, it showed no signs of punctuation of any sort. Yet on holding the verso against a lit rush, this new book of Morses responded most remarkably to the silent query of our world's oldest light, and its recto let out the piquant fact that it was but pierced but not punctured, in the universally sense of the word, of the term, by numerous stabs and foliated gashes made by a pronged instrument. These paper wounds, 4 in type, were gradually and correctly understood to mean stop, please stop, do please stop, and oh, do please stop, respectively. And following up their one true clue, the circumflexus wall of a single-minded men's asylum, accentuated by bite so fub rock angle ascend dismal itchma, yard inquiries pointed out that they had been provoked by a fork of a grave profuser at his breakfast table, acutely professionally piqued to introduce a notion of time upon a plane surface by punctual holes, in space. Deeply religious by nature and position, and warmly attached to thee, and smear bread and better, and him and new laid dills, it was rightly suspected, but such ire could not have been visited by him, Professor Prendergast, even unwittingly, upon the ancestral pneuma of one, whom, with Ruma, he venerated shamelessly at least once a week at Cockspur Common as his apple in his eye, and her first boy's best friend. And though plain English for a married lady, misled heaps by the way, yet when some peer or peeress detected that the four-leaved shamrock or quadrifoil jab was more recurrent wherever the script was clear and the term terse, and that these two were the selfsame spots naturally selected for her perforations by Dame Partlet on her dung heap, thinkers all put groan in watering spillful prattleland only and a playful fowl, and musical me, and not you in any case, two and two together. And with a swarm of bisses honey hunting after, a sigh for shime, oh, the petty bonny rouge, separated modest mouths. So be it. And it was. The letter-making of the exploits of foreign Camelson when he was in the Finn's country was soldiers' men, with acknowledgement of our fervor of the first instant he remains yours most faithfully, for postscript see spoils, though not yet had the sailor sipped that sup, nor the humphar foam to the fill, and fox and geese still kept the peace around l'auberge du Père Adam. Small need after that, old Jeromozilium, old Huffsnuff, old Andycox, old Olia Cassandrum, for quizzing your weekenders come to the RQ with, shoots off in a hiss, muddles up in a muss-mess, and as whole as a dismantled new drunkard's son. Howbeit we heard not a son of sons to leave by him to oceanic society in his old man without a thing in his ignorance. Tulkul McHooley. And it was thus he was at every time, that son. And the other time, the day was in it, and after the morrow, Diarmid is the name is on the writing chap of the Psalter, the juxtajunctor of a Diarmid, and he passing out of one desire into its fellow. The daughters are after going and luging for him, Torba's nice lookers of the fair neck, wanted for millinery servants to Olderly's person by the Torty Askinses, formerly confounded with another. Maybe growing a mustache, did you say, with an adorable look of amusement, and uses no-class billiard balls with an up-and-down ladder? Not Hans the Courier, though, had only had some little laughings and some less of cheeks, and were he not so worried by his bulb of persecution, he could have, aye, and would have, as true as Essex Bridge. And not goffif go gossip, I declare to man, no, to all's much relief, once half hypothesis of the jabberjaw ape, amok the showering chestnuts of Brusinose, was hotly dropped, and his room taken up by that odious and still today insufficiently malestimated note-snatcher. Cack, pfui, bosh and fighty, much Ernie, Gospotin, says you, Shem the penman.